Hey there, everyone. I'm Tony from Marathon Mates. Welcome to episode 32 of the Flying RuNR Podcast. Our special guest today is Kel Walker, run coach. He will answer that question that you may have. How can a coach help me get better at running? Are you ready to run? And let's find out. Let's go.
Welcome to the thrilling world of the Flying RuNR, brought to you by the Marathon Mates.
Right and ready to go. Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to the Flying RuNR Podcast. On this episode, we will answer that question that many runners have. How can a coach help my running? And we welcome Kel Walker. He's an Athletics Australia Level 2 recreation running coach. Level 3 now, so I didn't know if you'd updated. We welcome Kel to the podcast. How are you, Kel? And thanks for joining.
Thanks, everyone. I'm glad to be here, and hopefully I can help answer those questions that everybody wants to know.
Yeah, we've got a couple for you, so we can't wait to dive into how a run coach can help you running. But first, as always, we've got a couple of little things to cover off. As always, Team Ellis, how have you been? And importantly, how did your training go this weekend?
I hate training in the summer. Next time somebody says, let's sign up for a winter marathon in America, can somebody just punch me in the head and just say, that was the most stupidest idea you've ever had? This is probably our fourth year in a row where we have trained for a marathon during Brisbane summer, and I am over this. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm getting slower and slower and slower. However, we did complete 24 Ks, and I got to have a swim afterwards, so I'm happy. Park run was a little bit of a hangover park run, unfortunately.
Big time.
Probably shouldn't go drinking with the neighbours the night before on an impromptu don't eat and then drink and then get up for park run with 4 hours sleep is all I can say on that one with the heat.
Yeah. So to people, keep yourself hydrated, eat the right food, stay off alcohol.
Sleep well.
Get a few hours sleep beforehand. We think we got about 4 hours sleep. We were probably very seedy and very hungover, but we still had fun. It was at St. Lucia Park Run. It's along the Brisbane River at University of Queensland. It was a good run. I still went sub 25 minutes, so it wasn't too bad a run. And, it was quite hot and humid. So
I've had better runs is all I can say.
Maybe you sweated it out. So before we go to me, Kel, are you training for anything specific at the moment?
So at the moment, I am training for the Runaway Half Marathon in Sydney in May. I'm actually coaching Ken too. I'm doing their in a west local area here squad. Training them up for it to build them up to it. So as a result, I run with them as well. So I won't be racing it or challenging my personal best or anything like that, but I'll be running with these guys and encouraging them along the way, giving them tips, advice, all that sort of stuff as they hit the walls and hit those mental challenges and things that you do in the longer races. So, so that's the main one. I will be on the Gold Coast for a couple of clients who are running marathons. I've got one that is going to do hopefully a Boston qualifier in the Gold Coast Marathon. So I'll be there supporting her. And as such, I won't actually run the marathon. I'll be doing the 10K.
The only one we're not doing.
Yeah. See, I had a bad year last year. I had atrial fibrillation diagnosed in December, and I had over 6 months of feeling really down and flat and all these sort of things. Didn't know I had atrial fibrillation at all. It wasn't until I went for a prostate biopsy that they actually identified that I was in atrial fibrillation. So that would explain why I felt pretty ordinary for the 6 months from May. But I should have trusted the Garmin watch. The Garmin watch actually did tell me, but I didn't see it. I just thought I was sick, or it was a little bit out of whack or something like that, because I had no symptoms at all. So I didn't trust the watch. I should have. It is a good watch, the Phoenix series, so why didn't I trust it?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. So it's now pacemaker time, I'm assuming, for you? Or
No, actually, they did a cardio version, and
Yep.
so far so good. I've stayed in sinus rhythm, so that's the most important part.
Excellent.
So we're monitoring it, but
Take it
yeah.
away.
Yeah, you don't want to go to pacemaker.
No.
Pacemaker stops you running.
Well, no, it
Yeah.
No,
doesn't.
and that's well,
Hinder
yeah.
the run.
I do have a couple of other friends that do run with pacemakers and the likes, but yeah, I'm not ready for that sort of stuff just yet. Hopefully, stay as natural as I possibly can, as long as I can.
That's
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
And
Tara, I support you in your determination around never to train in summer again.
You're the same.
I was talking to someone at work, and now I've got people at work following my Strava, and they say, 25K on the weekend, well done. And I just said, I'm over this. Just hurry up, Tokyo. Let's get it done. And I'm actually looking forward to that week before Tokyo, because I've already just told myself I'm not going to do anything once I've tapered. And then I am going to absolutely have the next 2 weeks off and just rest and let the body decide when to get started again. But yeah, I mean, we did 25K. Sharon was slightly less, but I was about 20, just over 25. Pretty comfy with cutoffs in Tokyo up until that stage. However, the 34K one has now just sort of popped its head, because there's a really weird 5K segment there from 30 to 34 that you've fundamentally got to run 7-minute Ks in. So,
hence the reason why I did a negative split in Tokyo, because that one really scared me. That's the only marathon I've negative split in, and that actual cutoff was like, oh, I've got to get faster.
Yeah, and it's a long way in that one. You go past the finish turn off, and you can see the turn off. It's 1 kilometer down that road, and you hit the finish line, but you've got to go out 5 more Ks and back 5 more Ks. So mentally it plays on you, that last little stretch there in Tokyo. So what have you got left? You got 3 more weeks once this episode airs before Tokyo, right?
Yeah, it was 4 weeks Sunday, so it's 3 weeks next Sunday. So 30K next week, and then it'll be a 21 and then a 10 in the weekend before. And then that'll do me, and I'll be ready, fit, and ready to go. So, I think the adrenaline on the day and the cooler weather will certainly get us across the line. So,
it's not your first marathon. You know what you're doing.
No, it's not our first,
right.
but it might be my last. But anyway.
No, it's too late. You can sign up for 2 more this year after this one.
Yeah, you got Gold Coast to New York.
That's it. I thought Sydney last year was going to be my last in that heat.
We have signed up for Sydney as well, so that's
okay.
another year with 4. So let's get to the news, Sharon. And as always, I'm going to hand over to Tim as we look at the world of running. So what's been happening?
Well, it's been a big week this week, Tony, in the world of marathon running. The USA Olympic Marathon Trials were held on the weekend. They were held in Orlando, Florida. And there was if you remember a few episodes ago, we talked about the controversy around the start time and the heat and all sorts of things. Well, they're able to bring it back to a 10 a.m. start for the men and 10:20 a.m. start for the women. And the temp and humidity, guess what, was not a non-issue largely for the day. There was no real issues or problems with that in the end. The course itself comprised of a 1 by 2.2 mile loop and then 3 8-mile loops. And we know how much we love loop running. So
pretty uninspiring for
but a fairly flat looking course. Orlando is a flat city. It's built on swamplands, so it would have been flat, easy running in the temperatures they had. But the loops would have just done your head in, I think. I'll go through the results and then I'll talk a little bit about it a little bit more. So in the men's, there was the top three are really the important ones to look at. I guess there's a number of other results in there, but the two fastest seeded marathoners for the year of 2023 were Connor Mance and Clayton Young, and those two dominated this race, particularly in this last few kilometres. They ran it in 2:09:05 and 2:09:06 respectively. Both Connor and Clayton are training buddies, and they actually ran it as a team out there on the course. It was quite evident they were running as a team. They were pacing each other. They were talking to one another. At one stage there, I think it was around about 38 Ks, 36 Ks, there was a drink station there, and they're giving each other high fives in the middle of the race. So they're training buddies. They finished it together. In fact, Clayton Young, who came second, pushed Connor Mance to the front with about 100 meters to go and let him finish first. So those two have definitely made the Olympic team, becoming first and second. Third place was a guy called Leonard Korora. Now, there's an asterisk on him as far as whether he makes the Olympic team or not, and I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. I guess the other notable runner there, when I look through the list of names, Galen Rupp, who's competed in two past Olympics for the US and quite a famous runner, came 16th overall and ran it in 2:14. Yeah. So the way it works, it's a very confusing system, the Olympic marathon trials, and the US decides they're going to have all the people who qualified or have got qualifying times to go off and have a one race only do or die event. First over the line gets the Olympic spot. Other countries like Australia and the UK base it on a point system and base it on an eligibility system of over a 2-year period, who runs the fastest marathons and do they meet qualifying times and blah, blah, blah. And then they pick their marathoners out of that. I don't know which way is best. I think a do or die event means you train for 4 years and you end up having to run your best time on your best day. And as we know, as marathoners, you don't always have a best day. Sometimes things go wrong. And it seems like a lot of pressure to put on guys, especially 6 months prior to the Olympics, which is all we're talking about at the moment. So there is no sort of plan B if you're a US athlete going for it, but it does make for an exciting event. It's all broadcast on TV and everything else. Now, I mentioned Leonard Korora, who came third, has been a bit of an asterisk. So the USA had actually only officially unlocked 2 out of the 3 marathon spots. And those spots were unlocked essentially because of the performances of the athletes prior and how many had got through qualifying times. Yeah. So Mance and Young have definitely qualified first and second. They have got qualifying times and they're there. Korora has to wait, unfortunately, until about the 5th of May when they work out the international marathon rankings, and then they do a cutoff as to who's coming and who's not. In all likelihood, he will make it, and they're quite positive that he'll make it into the team, but he has to wait till the 5th of May, which is probably going to do his head in. Do you train hard? Do you continue training for an Olympic event that you may or may not go to? I guess you can always then deviate off into, say, Berlin in September or one of the later events, Chicago during the year. But it would be quite challenging in his world. In the women's space.
But Tim, just before you go, it is a really confusing way that they do it, because from my understanding, because Connor and Clayton had run fundamentally there's 2 qualifying times. One was the 2:08.1, which unlocked the spot, and then there's a 2:11.30, which is the Olympic qualifying time.
Correct.
So Clayton and Connor unlocked the 2 spots that were available. And so therefore everyone there was racing for those 2 spots as long as they beat the 2:11.30, which is crazy to me. I mean, Connor and Clayton were the ones that unlocked the spots. They should be selected and going straight through. But fundamentally, they had to do what they did to make the team, which is crazy. Now, the other thing with Leonard Korora is that if another American now unlocks that 3rd spot by running a 2:08.10, Korora makes the team. So,
Yes.
so crazy.
It's a weird way of doing it.
So now he's waiting for hopefully someone to run a sub 208, or as you said, the May deadline when they determine the spot. So it's just to me it's ridiculous. So
Yeah, but I think it's difficult all around the world, and I know Australia has a slightly different ranking system than the UK, and different again than New Zealand. So each country sort of chooses their own journey with it, and the IOC has some very broad times and guidelines around what qualifies and doesn't qualify. So there's A qualifying times and B qualifying times, and it's quite a weird system. And I get it, because you can't just run a marathon every weekend to qualify. Most elites only doing 1 to 2 marathons a year. So
and it's all to do with keeping the field to 80 participants in the Olympics.
Yeah.
And what they found in 2021 is that they actually had over 80 who'd qualified at the 2:11:30. And they ran it, but the goal, from what I can understand, is to limit it to 80 runners. So, and with Australia, we've had Robinson and the young fella from the US that have unlocked spots. Have qualified at the 2:08. Is that right?
I believe so. Yeah.
We've got a handful of ladies who've all beat the qualifying time.
Correct.
And at the end of the day, only 3 of them can go. So
it'll be the 3 fastest times, I believe, is how they
you would
that.
imagine. You would imagine.
Yeah.
Sorry, back to
no,
you.
That's right. In the women's event, a lady called Fiona O'Keefe ran 2:22:10 to win it. It was the first time she's ever run the distance. She qualified via a half marathon last year, and has a history of track running on 5,000 meters on the track. So she came out of nowhere, held a pace the whole way through, and basically took off, I think, around about that 18-mile mark. So with about 1 loop to go or so. Emily Sison, who is the national champion, I guess, and the favorite, came second. And then Dakota Lindworm came third.
Yeah.
Now I always feel for the 4th place getter. So in this event, in the women's, the 4th place was Jessica McLean. She missed out on the Olympic spot by 15 seconds.
Unbelievable.
Now, as I said, it's a one-off race, 4 years of training, 4 years of hard work for that one day, and you miss out by 15 seconds. I guess it's no different than a swimmer who goes through an Olympic qualifying event and misses out by a fraction of a second. But Jessica McLean is unsponsored, has basically a privateer, organised it all herself, got in there, got to the event, and came 4th with that time.
Yeah.
Some other notable names on there: Sarah Hall, who we know in Australia, who's run at Gold Coast Marathon a number of times, came 5th in 2:26. Lindsay Flanagan, who's been around for a while, in 2:26 as well, ran in 8th place. And my favourite of all time, Desi Linden, the favourite from US, who won Boston a number of years ago in the pouring rain. She came 11th overall. But a couple of others that we know. Kira DiManto was a DNF in that event. So,
interesting.
Pretty impressive that O'Keefe not only won the event, but she also set a new championship record for that event. So, and is the first ever women's marathoner to win the event on her debut marathon. So, and
again, that's what we're seeing: people winning marathons, big marathons, on their debut. And the interesting thing in the men's also, and I'm glad that the 2 winners gave credit, was a guy called Zach Panning, who ended up coming 6th, and he kept the pace. In their words, he made that race because he had the pace. So yeah, it's a shame he ended up coming 6th, but at the end of the day, really weird way to choose your team. But anyway, that's the Yankees for you.
Yeah, I don't know, Kel, would that be something you would love to try and do, as a do or die type event to qualify, or would you rather do it over a period of time?
I think the over the time would be the better way mentally for any athlete to at least know you've hit that target early on, and you can then try and push, to score your points or whatever. But yeah, do or die, like you said, 15 seconds, that's heartbreaking. You'd be happy with the result, in your first marathon, especially as an individual, unsponsored athlete. But to miss it by that close, That'd be heartbreaking.
What's
And then
that,
you
a third
sort of
of a
half wishing
second?
that you'd sort of be half wishing that the others injure themselves so that you get a shot.
Yeah. So the difference is a third of a second per kilometre difference.
Yeah.
Mm.
Unreal.
A third of a second.
Unreal.
So that's that news. The other news, just quickly, we talk about the Gold Coast Marathon. We just talked about it earlier. Kel, you mentioned it. We've talked about it in the past. The marathon's been sold out and has been sold out since the end of last year. Well, today they've announced that they've sold out the half marathon as well. So
Unreal.
I don't know what's going on in running events around Australia, but they're selling out everywhere really quickly. So anyone who's looking to do an event that lives in southeast Queensland, if you're looking, and I was speaking to somebody today about the half marathon at work, probably got to look for other events like the Brisbane Marathon or the Sunshine Coast Marathon.
Yeah.
And they're filling up very, very fast as well at the moment.
Yeah.
They just put up notes on their Facebook or on their socials saying that they're filling rapidly as well. So and now if you want to spot in either Brisbane Marathon or Sunny Coast Marathon for the southeast Queenslanders.
Yeah, and if you haven't booked your accommodation down the Gold Coast for that weekend, book it now because it's going to be very expensive because there's going to be a lot of people there. And that's
All
the
right.
news.
And that's the news. And so let's welcome Kel. Let's get some questions. Now, I first met Kel and his partner Linda back in 2018 at the New York City Marathon. And guess who we traveled with? Yes, you guessed it right, Traveling Fit. And I've been following Kel's page, Kel the Marathoner, ever since. And he's had a bit of a journey, and it's you heard a little bit about that earlier. So hopefully you get inspired about what Kel's been doing and where he is at the moment. So Kel, I'm really looking forward to this discussion, and I'm going to kick off the questions. Pretty simple one to get started. When did you first get into running, and why?
Well, it's a long story, isn't it? I pretty much started when I was a kid playing all sorts of sports. So I played rugby league in North Queensland, obviously running on the sidelines, etc. But it wasn't really until I moved to Sydney, that I got really into recreational running. I did running when I was in defence. That was just for fitness, mainly 5Ks because we had to do a 2.4 fitness test every year. So it wasn't until I met my current partner, Linda, that she introduced me to the City to Surf. And I started running that and trying to improve every year, and then started getting into other fun runs because she was into it as well. And, we traveled and did all sorts of things together, which was great, fun. And I did my first half marathon in 2014, my first marathon on the Gold Coast in 2015. And I was challenged for my first half marathon by my personal trainer to do it. And once I completed that, he asked me, what's next? And I went, I'll do a marathon, see what happens. And then I remember Gold Coast Marathon. I was standing at the airport there waiting to fly back to Sydney, thinking, never again, not doing another one. There's a guy in front of me that was going to another marathon the next weekend.
Wow.
Yeah. Jesus, if he can do that, I probably can too. And now I've done 10. So, yeah, a varied history, but yeah, it wasn't really until probably 2006-07 that I really got into recreational running.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
So you ran New York Marathon in 2018. What was that experience like for you compared to the other marathon that you've done? You did beforehand, because obviously being a major.
Yeah. So, like, I love Gold Coast. I love that finishing line. Where you come past all the clubs and they're all cheering for you and all that sort of stuff. And New York is just that on steroids. The whole atmosphere of the week leading into it, obviously as Tony was saying, we're traveling fit. So we had, training runs. We met Deke and the Indigenous Marathon Foundation boys. We, got to go to the expo, all those sort of things. And just the city itself, it accepts, all these runners coming in, and you see them walking around in their suits, track suits and stuff like that all around town. So you start getting that vibe, and then come race day, you're in your little pens and everybody else has got that nervous energy, and you start running up Verrazano Bridge, and I was on the bottom level for my time, and so I didn't get that massive, beautiful view that everyone gets, from the TV. But I stopped about halfway, I remember, and I'm taking a photo of the, Manhattan skyline and the fire tenders down there with the multicolored water coming out. And at that point, I went, you know what? I'm actually going to enjoy this. I'm not going to race it. I'm just going to run along. And then got into Brooklyn, and they were like 20 deep the whole way of into Queens, and that was just amazing. And they're cheering everybody, and and then you got the firefighters, and you got the police, and you got every other emergency services there, and all the bands along the way. It just was never quiet until you probably got into the Jewish quarter. And they're doing dart runs across in front of everybody, trying to get across the road, and it's the funniest thing watching them. And then I remember getting onto the 39th Street Bridge, where it does go quiet and you actually hear the footsteps of every runner around you. But then it starts up again on First Avenue. It's just an amazing experience. I do remember when I finished I was so cold with my hands. I actually had to ask one of the volunteers if they had any hand warmers. And even then, I was still freezing. So, but yeah, the whole experience was just amazing.
Can't wait for it.
I recommend it to anybody. It's just, for me, it was more about just enjoying it rather than racing it, and soaking up that experience of the crowd on the side cheering you along. And Linda actually got 10 times more photos than me with all the firefighters. I don't know why that was.
I can't wait. Tara and I are there at the end of this year, and we can't wait for New York.
Tony.
And Tony will be there too. So
you'll love it.
Yeah. So you've mentioned New York, you've mentioned Gold Coast. What other marathons have you done, Kel?
Sydney and Melbourne. I've done one Melbourne marathon. I've done 3 Sydneys, 5 Gold Coasts, and the 1 New York in my 10.
Cool. And I guess then you moved into athletics coaching, or have you always been involved in athletics coaching as well?
I haven't always been involved. I spent 20 plus years in defence and law enforcement, and then my son decided to come and move with me. So then I spent 10 years as a sports administrator at a golf club, and it wasn't until 2016 where I did my first level 2 athletics coaches course. Just wanted to think of using coaching as a retirement thing to keep me going, make a little bit of money on the side sort of thing. But when it changed was in 2018 with COVID. It really started to boom, the business itself. A lot of parents were bringing kids to me and, wanting to at least keep them active, but, they wanted them to progress, and the kids wanted to progress as well. So 2022, I left the sports administrator job and started up my run team, and been, ploughing ahead ever since. Schools, I was with Skeggs Darlinghurst in COVID, helping them. And then in 2022, I started with Trinity Grammar. So it's been great fun with that.
Excellent. Do you specialize in a specific distance with your coaching, or is there a specialty that you prescribe to?
It's more of a bit of a mix at the moment. So a lot of my younger kids are sprinters, and it's more the middle distance are older kids, high school kids. And then there's the online guys, which are a whole range of different ages, right up to about a 60-odd-year-old. So it's trying to go for Boston qualifier. So, yeah. It's unusual to do it, but I have, obviously, with the sporting background that I have, a bit of a sprinting history. It wasn't until I sort of took up City to Surfs and stuff like that I got interested in longer stuff. As a kid, I always wanted the 100 meters done, to go away. It didn't hurt as much. Cross country, I'm at the back walking around with everybody else.
Yeah.
But yeah, things change. So yeah.
So
I've
how
got
would
about.
you? Oh, sorry. Yep.
Sorry.
You
I was
got
just
what?
going to say I got about 30 athletes at the moment. Majority are kids under 18. About a dozen or so made it through the state this past year. Had about half a dozen likely to go to nationals or have been to nationals in the primary schools this year. And one of my 11-year-olds, his goal was just to go to nationals. He ended up being the 100-meter 11-year-old champion in his first attempt. So,
Well done.
he surprised himself. He was at state level. He was talking that he was the 4th quickest. I had to sort of try and meld that mindset to actually being, his times, were like half a step away from these other boys, but in his head he was 4th all the time. And I said, no, you can beat him, and sure enough, he did.
So I
that
guess
was good.
with that age group difference, and with what you were just talking about, what is your actual coaching philosophy? Like, how do you actually get into these people's head to make them change that thought, I guess?
I guess it's about trying to be positive with them. Like, I'm probably their biggest cheerleader in training and everything else like that. I'm encouraging all the time. I believe in the athlete first is probably the biggest thing, especially at the moment with kids doing so many different sports throughout their lives that it's very easy for coaches of other sports, especially when they're not, state or national level coaches like the NRL or anything like that. They're just mum and dad who's done a basic course to help coach the kids. The load that goes on these kids at times is can be too much, and they can end up with burnout by the time they're 17, 18, or stress fractures, in their early teens while they're still going through puberty and things like that. So for me, I like to take account from the actual athletes and their parents as to what they've been doing through the week, what their weeks look like generally, what their day has been. It's usually the first question I ask them anyway is, how's your day? And it's just a general conversation and get to know the kids through that sort of stuff as well. And, then if it's a tough day for them, I adjust the, training session accordingly and give them an easier one. Like tonight, I just had squat before I, caught up with you guys, and had a girl, my 14-year-old girl who's been with me for 18 months now and come a long way. She placed first in Little Athletics regionals in the 800, 1500, 3000 meters for under 15s, all PBs, which is fantastic. So obviously today, there's no point giving her a speed session. We did a very basic 800, 6x800s at, a real easy pace for her. It was actually so slow that they actually felt that they struggled to actually run it. So, talking to all the kids, they were going, this is just so slow. It's ridiculous. They actually found it harder to run that slow than they actually do normally.
I would definitely agree with that.
Tim, when he's training with me, he's running very slow compared to what he normally does.
Their biggest comment was their breathing.
Yeah.
Their breathing was the biggest comment. They're trying to find that rhythm that they normally have when they work hard, doing it on an easier run, trying to find that same rhythm. That's what they found hard. And it's just a challenge.
Yeah, I find the stride pattern changes, the legs get shorter, the cadence slows down, and you work muscles a bit differently. So, it always becomes harder. So tell us a little bit about your coaching process. So you mentioned squad. You also mentioned the individualized training plans. So if I was to come to you for training, what would the experience be like? Do I get an individual plan? Do I train with other people? How does that all work, and how does it sort of?
Well, I guess it depends on you. Yeah, I guess it depends on you. So obviously, when you approach me, I would ask you a whole heap of questions. So I'd ask how long you've been training, what you're training for, what sort of training you've been doing. What's your health pattern like? Have you had any major injuries? What injuries have you had in the past? That sort of thing. How often can you train? Basically, everything that I could possibly try and ask about you. What your goals are for the future, not just this year. Are you wanting to do all 7 marathons if it happens, instead of the 6 medals? We're still hoping, but so we'd ask all those sort of questions, and then the next question would probably be, okay, so what are you looking for? Are you looking for one-on-one coaching a couple times a week, or are you looking for just purely squad training and training with others, or do you live in Queensland or far north Queensland and you can't physically see me, but I can put you onto an online plan where I'll put you through Training Peaks, which is my platform that I use. Put their whole plan into it, usually starting off with their goals and working backwards. So for like Tony's case, he's got Tokyo in a few weeks, so we would start with the Tokyo date, work back for however long it was that we were going to work on, and then we go through periodization, which is the different phases, which starts with your pre-competition and competition phase and your building phases, and then your transition phases after the race. So different things happen in those times. Transition is usually really easy running, just basic. Like Tony said, he's going to take 2 weeks off. It can be just as much as that, or just run for feel, just to try and get you back into that mindset, that headspace. And then you would probably go through into some base building again, depending on how long you've been training. More specific training as you're getting closer to the competition time, and then competition or your goal race, getting more sharp and that sort of stuff. That's more the athletic side. Recreational runners, obviously start off with the base, and then we build up as we get into our longer runs, and then take 3 weeks, 2 weeks, depending on the person, what they like to do. I personally like to over distance run for mine, especially on my first ones, because I like the idea of knowing that I can actually run that distance.
That's me.
Yeah. Generally, a lot of other people believe in 32 Ks as the benchmark. Some people believe in 26 Ks. It all depends, and I've tried 38, I've tried 32, I've tried longer ones. I found the longer ones suited me better because I actually was getting the distance that I think my sweet spot generally is around about 80K weeks. That seemed to be my sweet spot, where I wasn't getting injured, I wasn't feeling sick and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's generally what I would do, but it all really depends on what your actual sport is. Recreational runners, yes, longer building. Sprinters, they're doing short explosive stuff all the time, so they might be doing 10 meters accelerations. They might be doing what we call wickets, which is running over hurdles, trying to improve their running form. Lots of drills to replicate the running style, running motion. We might do 30, 40, 50 meter flyers, which is a sprint and then a relaxation and then sprint again, trying to trick the body into running faster than what it is, because there's a theory that your maximum speed is your maximum speed, and that doesn't really change unless you grow and develop over time, but generally your maximum speed is not going to change. So by sprinting and then relaxing and then trying to sprint faster, you're trying to trick the mind that, okay, I can go a little bit faster, and then hopefully lift their levels up that way. Distance runners, you're mixing it up from 2s, 4s, 8s, kilometer repeats, things like that, in a variety of different ways as well. So it's all dependent on the individual athlete. Yours, even if you're in a squad, you will still have a program yourself, But on the days that they come to squad, it's basically the same program, but you might run at different speeds depending on where your level is.
Gotcha.
So I'm not going to get you to run a 2-minute 8K, 800 meter if you're a beginner that's just coming into this the program and things like that. So yeah.
Kel, what sort of technology and tools do you use to keep a track of the progress of an athlete?
So a lot of it is a bit of old school, I guess. I keep a note and pad with me at the track. I have stopwatches, obviously, and record their times and things like that, and then come back and put it into Excel spreadsheets and things like that. I do use Training Peaks and use their metrics there. Some of my athletes are obviously on Strava and Garmin Connect and things like that, so I can actually see their metrics as to their race runs and things like that. I can see their graphs and all that, so it keeps me an idea how I'm going. The coach's eye is always one of the best ones. You can see an athlete developing, so their movement pattern changes over time. You can also see if they're tired and fatigued and things, or overtraining just by their attitudes, their mentalities and things like that. So generally, when you see that, you pull them back a little bit and give them an easier session and just try and build them back up to where they're in a better headspace, or have a really short squad session or training session as a result, because they're just not going to be there and getting any benefit out of it. I'm looking at getting Freelap, which is a timing gate system for the sprinters. It's not a cheap product. It's about $1,500 just for it. What that'll do is it'll give the kids a little bit of timing in their sprints rather than just me using a stopwatch. It'll be a lot more accurate and give them that confidence as they go that they're improving in each set or session, or over 6 months, 12 months, whatever it be.
Excellent.
So I guess with you were talking about the coach's eye is always the best way for you to do your analysis of somebody. When you see them running, do you recommend a physio or a podiatrist or anything like that if you think that they require that, or is that something that you don't look at and you just hope that it goes that way? Or what sort of works that way for you?
Series going on, I'll definitely make suggestions, and as a coach, we definitely try and work as a team with other practitioners. Like I know Brad Beer quite well. I've referred a lot of my clients to Brad Beer up there on the Gold Coast of Togo. Great guy. He's got great knowledge. His podcast is brilliant as well. But so I would refer him up there. Like my 60-year-old that's doing the Boston qualifier in July. Got to remember that's July. She went to Brad and actually turned her training around, and the best thing is Brad feeds back to me as well. So he's contacting me and letting me know how she's progressing, and then I can make adjustments to a training program accordingly. And we just work as a team. And it can be others like a GP, your running store, etc. That you try and create this team around the athletes as much as it's around you, but around the athletes as well. So I'm often asked, what shoes should I get? Well, I'm not an expert, but go and talk to these people. They're the experts in it. You got a niggle in your calf. Okay, here's some basic stuff at the moment that I can give you to stretch. But if it doesn't go away, go and see blah, or a physio or a podiatrist or anything that's near where you are. Or if you have one, that's fine. But I have these people that I believe in and trust as well. So it's just having that team around that makes a big difference to the athlete and gives them a lot more confidence as well.
How easy is it, Kel, to change somebody's running technique style? So, for instance, I'm your typical jogger runner that will run and my feet lift probably, 10 centimeters off the ground and shuffle backwards and forwards in an arc that's sort of a little bit behind my bum and a little bit in front of my legs. How could I go about changing, I guess, or how easy is it for me to change with the help of a coach to go from that sort of a style to almost like a Kipchoge style where you have that circular motion of legs swinging through? Is that an easy thing to do in coaching, or is that quite challenging?
Look, it's not an easy thing because it takes time. It's like anything, it's the biggest challenge I get sometimes is kids get through school, athletics carnivals, then they get represented, to regionals and zones and things like that. And then the parents go, oh, he's off to state in 3 weeks, better get a coach. And can I improve him in that 3 weeks? Well, no, you can't. It's
by the way,
it's not going to happen. Yes, I can give you tips.
I was just going to say, all my other kids that I'm coaching are already in the race and are going to beat him anyway.
Yes. But it's a thing. It's consistency. So I think the advantage of having a coach to help you improve is we can give you the tips and techniques, so starting off with basic running drills. Yes, you can go onto YouTube and see a million running drills, but if you don't do them properly, it doesn't really improve your actual running. It's the biggest thing that I have with a lot of my kids at Trinity and stuff like that. They just go through the motions, right? High knees, okay, but they'll go high knees with their toes pointed, all right? B skips, they're out in front doing the can, right? Instead of trying to use the hamstrings and the glutes to bring the foot back underneath the hips. They'll overstride, right? And you've got to pull them back in. I've got one of the kids where the last few weeks at Trinity, I've been giving him my watch with the metronome working to try and get him to shorten his stride. And it makes a big difference when you see him, actually listen and do those sort of things.
Also prevents a lot of injuries if you're not overstriding.
It does.
So,
it does.
Yeah.
I had a lot of injuries when I first started running, without all the study that I did learning about coaching and stuff like that, with my calves and Achilles, because they were doing the work, not the bigger muscles. And that's the biggest challenge for most people is the calf does all the work for the bigger muscles. And you all of a sudden wonder why you got plantar fasciitis, you got Achilles tendinopathies, you got torn calves, strained calves, shin splints, you got all these things down in the lower limbs, and it's because you're not using the muscles the way you do. And, just go for a run around a park or, South Bank in in Brisbane there, and you just watch the different types of runners as they're running past. You can tell runners that have been running for a long time compared to the weekend warrior that sort of gets out there and they're running, or they're the really tight ones and the shoulders are up around the ears and all these sort of things. So it's by having a coach there, we can correct and advise and remind them, that they should be dorsiflexing, they should be leaning underneath their hips or the center of gravity rather than down in front and braking and that sort of stuff. And we can do the drills. Even when they're doing the session, we can comment to them after in their rest break that, okay, you're overstriding at the moment. Let's try and shorten the steps a little bit, shorter, quicker steps, things like that.
And it does make a huge difference because the old rule was 180 was your cadence, and that's so wrong now because everybody has got a different cadence and it depends on how you run as a person. So, for example, if Tim's running cadence was at 180 and my running cadence was at 180, we'd be having totally different running styles. I could injure myself and Tim could be doing perfectly well or vice versa. So that's where a running coach is really, really good because you don't listen to that old-fashioned rule of thumb, I guess is what you'd like to call it. And it's the same as heart rate training and stuff like that. You guys would know a lot more about it, but there was that old rule of 220 minus your age is, your max heart rate. Now that's completely wrong and been debunked many times, and
yet we still use it.
And yet we still use it.
Everyone does, the same as the 180.
Yeah.
The 180 go on YouTube and they're all talking cadence. Let's run at 180.
Yeah.
Which the 180 started at the Olympics based on professional athletes that are running around a track.
Well, I actually heard it was 169. So, but anyway.
Everybody has a different cadence.
Hey, Kel, couple
The
of
reality
questions.
is with cadence, especially, is it depends on what pace you're running.
Mm,
Right? If you're sprinting, you're going to be up around 200.
yeah.
If you're actually doing a slow, easy jog, you're going to be around 160, 170s.
Mm.
It all
And if you're
depends.
doing hill running, it's going to be completely different again.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. So we've got a couple of questions from our followers on Facebook. So I'll just kick off. And first one's from Sharon, who has asked, what is the recommended recovery time after running a marathon?
There's a lot of different ways of saying this, just like we were talking about with cadence and heart rate zones and things like that. I think personally, and from what I have done research on through my studies, it depends on the individual. It really does. Like, I recommend that they take whatever time it does to actually get out and go for a run. Right. So if you can go for a little 5K run after a marathon just to shake the legs out nice and easy, fine. If you can't run or walk properly for about 2 weeks, that's fine as well. Right. It's an individual situation. You need to look into it yourself. You'll know yourself if you can actually run or if you can't. I remember New York, I had like I don't know if you've ever seen the video of the New York Marathon, post-marathon, where they try and walk down the stairs and the real quirky music.
Yeah.
I was doing that in New York, trying to get up to the after-dinner party. So I don't think I was planning on running for a while after that. I think I just saw myself sitting on the beach at Maui. I'll get it right. Spit it out, Kel. In Maui for about 2 weeks afterwards, just lazing and relaxing before I got back into it. But I did end up going for a run. So yeah, I think personally it's a personal choice. You'll know. As a coach, I could turn around and say, I want you to go for a walk the first day after, maybe a 2K jog after that, build up to 5K by the end of the week, just easy running. And you might try and do that, and you might go, no, I can't do that. So, it's up to you.
Yeah, excellent.
It can vary. I think the statistics are 2 to 3 weeks generally, but it can be 4 to 6. It all depends on you, your goals, what you've got coming ahead, all those sort of things. Was that your A race? Did you race it really well? Did you have problems, injuries? There's a lot of factors that go into it. And then as a coach, I can, certainly sit there and, give you advice and guidance as to whether you should or shouldn't be, training again or whatever.
Yeah.
And I guess it depends on what speed you did that marathon at, how much effort you put into it, and what sort of calories you've burnt and what sort of muscles
Absolutely
you've got and everything like that afterwards as well. So listen to your body is always our rule as well.
It's a great rule. It's a great rule, and it takes a while to learn that one. But yes,
it
be
does,
in tune with your body.
Don't compare yourself to anybody else because your body does something different to everyone else's.
That's right, and that's where Strava can get into trouble.
Absolutely. Angela, one of our listeners, would like to know, what is your recommendation for the best cross-training activity?
My best is water running.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Everybody knows
really
water
hard.
running. It is extremely hard. Extremely hard.
And boring.
That's the thing. You can do it in no time, Tony. So everybody knows water running. If you YouTube it as well, you'll see it about rehab. Water running can actually be a great session to actually do in place of a speed session on the track. We, in our level 3 course, did a 15-minute workout, which was basically a 5-minute tempo and then 1 minute on, 1 minute off intervals, right? So you're actually running and getting yourself out of the water, and you're working so hard for that 1 minute without actually touching the ground or the water, the bottom or anything like that. And you getting a better work, I felt I was more exhausted in that 15 minutes than sitting on a track for an hour. And you're not having impact. You're not having any of the usual sort of things of, having to get into a gym and stuff like that as well. And all we had was just one of those tubes, the floaty tubes under our arms, and you're just running. And you got to use your running style, running motion.
Try it without the tube, and it's harder.
Yeah, well, you can get the belt, but if we did it without as well. We did the 1 minutes a couple of times without, trying to get that power to get up out of it. It's a lot harder, but it works, and you work hard for it. You really do. And the resistance of the water is part of the reason why it works so well.
Yeah, I think I'd need to have a beer on both sides of the pool and just run over.
Yeah, you're not supposed to touch the ground, but you can do that for drills. Like there are good running drills too that you can do in the water that does also create and help improve your running as a result. So water running is probably my best one. The next one would maybe be the elliptical, because it's almost the same motion as running, apart from the arms, doing the
and it's
Nordic
low
skiing.
impact.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but any form of other exercise with minimal impact is a great option for cross training.
Okay.
Cool. Aisha, who's been on the program before as a guest as well, has made the question: what's the one mistake you see most from runners when they're training for a marathon?
Pushing too hard all the time.
Yeah.
An easy run is meant to be an easy run, and they may go out at quicker, basically a tempo pace instead of an easy pace. Or then, you might have missed a session because something going on in your life, especially recreational runners, and then you try and make it up, and that doesn't work. Or you'll go a hard session one day, hard session the next day, hard session the next day, because you think that's the right idea, but all that does is create injuries. All right, the real way.
Recovery.
Absolutely. The rule is, and Dr. Shona Halson is a great person in this respect. She says that the only session you are benefiting from is a session you are recovering from.
Yeah.
And in the world of athletics, especially in running, you'll do your session on one day. You're not benefiting from that day. You benefited from the next day when you take that recovery, or that night when you're sleeping and things like that.
Yeah, building the foundation.
So that's the biggest thing.
Yeah. And I think in some ways, Kel, you've just answered our last question as well for Kay. Once again, she's been on the podcast. How are you, Kay? Where she just asked, what's the best way to train for a marathon and avoid injury, which then prevents you from running said marathon? Now, my tip would be not to run the Bridge to Brisbane and break your ankle. But very quickly, what would you say there? Similar? Trust your body?
Yeah, similar. Yeah, so like I said before, start out, give yourself as much time as you can, right? So build a solid base and then gradually increase. And, yes, there's a 10% rule out there, but sometimes that's not going to work when you're talking shorter runs. 10% of a 10K is 1K extra. It's not a lot. So give it a little bit, but don't go silly and go 10, 20, etc. Don't make your weeks, and look at your total week, not just purely your individual runs as well. So, not going from 60Ks this week to 120Ks next week and then so on, which I have seen on Strava. And I can only assume that they haven't logged all their runs in those weeks where they were low, because it sort of went 60, 120, 60. It was sort of all over the place. Yeah. Consistency is the best way. Yeah, well, he wasn't injured, but I'd say he could soon end up injured as a result. But like I said, I don't think he was putting all his runs into Strava, so hence why the peaks and troughs. But yeah, just start out slow, build. Keep an eye on your nutrition, your recovery. Get massages if you need to help loosen those muscles. One of my favorites is the spiky ball. It's great for your calves. It does hurt, but it releases those tightness in there. So basic rehab of stretching, rolling, doing your drills, warming up properly before your speed sessions, all those sort of things will lead to you being in a better state to try and maintain the load that you're putting on your body through your training.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Kel, just want to thank you for popping in and sharing your wisdom. But before we go, I'm going to ask you the fast six. As I said, fast questions, even faster answers.
Let's see how we go.
All right. So let's go.
I'm scared.
Podcasts or music?
Hang on. My internet's dropping out.
Okay.
That's better.
We got you back?
Got me back.
All right. Podcasts or music?
Podcast.
Best running advice ever given to you?
The only session you're benefiting from is the session you're recovering from.
What advice would you give to someone starting out?
Take it easy and go slow.
Uphill or downhill?
I love downhills.
I'll let you on.
I let gravity take me. I don't do the work.
It's like recovery time. Absolutely. Yes.
I beat everybody going downhill while they're trying to brake. They got catching on the flat, but I beat them downhill because I just let go.
So gels or blocks?
Gels.
And
Morton's.
your favorite shoes to run in?
Have a wide variety. I do like the Magic Speeds. I have run well in the Metas and also the Nike Vaporflies.
Okay. All right.
So
well, thank you.
It's a bit of variety, and it also really depends on the race and or training and things like that. So
excellent.
I do mix my shoes up. You wouldn't want to see my wardrobe in there. It's like probably most runners, 50,000 running shoes.
Yeah, absolutely. Kel, if someone was listening to this and wants to connect with you, how would they do that?
So you can always connect through the website of my run team. I'm on Facebook, Instagram as well, and hopefully shortly on YouTube a little bit more than I am at the moment with actual tips and advice and things like water running sessions and things like that to try and help you improve your running.
Excellent. And we'll make sure that we've got some of those links in the show notes so our listeners and viewers can follow that through. So, but before we finish up the episode, we've got the cold hero. We've got Tim with his tip from Tim. So over to you, mate.
Cold hero. I've never heard that term before, but anyway, I'll take it. I don't know which cult I'm a hero of, but anyway. So my tip is about to be an honest runner, to be a successful runner, you've got to be honest and accountable with yourself, or you will be found out in the long term. Success doesn't happen unless you're honest and accountable. Plain and simple. You can't fake distance. You can't fake pace. If you cheat on your plan or you aren't listening to your body or a coach or a training plan, none of that's going to help you later on. All right. So you can't fake it. You can't cheat it. You've got to be honest and accountable. It's okay to have bad sessions. It's okay to miss a run and sleep in, but then you need to be accountable to yourself and honest with yourself to say, I missed that run, but I can get back on track, and make sure you get back on track. When it comes to marathons and marathon running, there is no winging it. Very few people, despite what they show you on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram, very few people can actually wing a marathon and get away with it without doing some damage to themselves. So my tip today is being accountable and honest with yourself. Plain and simple.
Very good.
That's a very, very good tip, Tim. Anything to add, Tara?
No, for a change.
I just had to make sure.
This time. Yeah.
Before I moved on. Okay. All right. Now, Tara, I know we're just about to end this episode, but I know you are really excited about next week's show.
Absolutely. We're going to talk to Jen Callett. So Jen is a beautiful, absolute legend of Australian running. She's going to be joining us next week. She's one of our inspirations. Now, we met Jen originally in Tokyo 2020. That got cancelled. And we didn't realise at the time how much of a legend she actually was in the running community. If you have a look at Jen, she has actually run 5 out of the 6 majors, and she's running in South Africa later this year to do Comrades. However, she actually has got age champions for the half marathon and the full marathon for, what is it, 6?
I'm not going to disclose her age. She can disclose her age.
Right. So she's got age champions, and that's after backing up. That was during Gold Coast Double last year as well. So she did the half marathon and the full marathon and got age champions in that one. So if you're looking to be inspired by a really humble, down-to-earth person as well, join us next week. She's very enjoyable to talk to. Very nice.
Yeah, very much looking forward to that. So, well, that wraps up the episode for tonight. As always, video of the episodes available on Spotify and YouTube. Audio is pretty much everywhere, especially on Apple and Amazon. And I have heard a little whisper that Google Podcasts are actually closing down. So just if you have been following us on Google Podcasts, that platform may not be available for much longer. So head over to Apple, Amazon, or Spotify is probably our tip. Now, remember, everyone, every step forward is a victory. Lace up, hit the road, and we're going to catch you on the next episode. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Kel. It's been a real pleasure and very insightful. And just thank you for all your tips. But until
thank you, guys. Thank you. Really appreciate being here.
Thanks, Kel.
So until next week, happy running.
Happy running.
Bye.
Bye.